We sort of all met through some parties and realised that we all had ambitions to just be involved with music. We didn't quite know then that we were going to be a record label, I don't think.
We set up the label as KOG Transmissions and started putting out our own music.
Being on KOG is a really good way to kind of plug into a big network of people in the electronic scene that have all known each other for a very long time. Just being with them opens a whole lot of other doors and kind of gives you a little KOG tick that kind of helps in a lot of situations. If people know that you're with the label, then obviously you're not going to be too amateur about what you're doing, so it definitely helps.
When we find artists for KOG releases, it's a mixture of them finding us and us finding them, usually always through friends. We make sure we get to know them first as people. We have made one or two mistakes where we've dealt with artists who we don't consider necessarily close friends, and it's always worked out badly, so now we're pretty draconian on that whole side. It's just not worth it. There's not necessarily enough money in like the music industry itself to actually have to deal with arseholes.
We did our first gig, which was at under the St James at a party called Move, like a mate's party, and some of the KOG guys came to that, and because they'd heard us on the radio and stuff, and were real into it and offered us a deal straight away.
Me and Dave ended up going down to their studio, which was in Western Springs at that stage, and just having a little look at their setup and being really impressed with how well they used the limited gear that they had, and very impressed by the fact that they'd managed to carve out their own very distinctive sound.
Hey, it's Ashby from KOG. How are you? Nice. Hey, I'm looking to try and get some more stuff done on the Concord Dawn thing.
In terms of a big release like Concord Dawn, in New Zealand we could press between usually 1,000 to 1,500 copies, and that's for the initial buy-in into the shops. As in terms of artwork and the way it's seen, its aesthetic, basically we need an artist to get the concept and stuff happening, and the way that second album is going to be marketed in bits and pieces. In the case of Concord Dawn, as I said before, Calvin So was responsible for the artwork, and a Marvel-like comics and the robots of Concord Dawn.
KOG, when they do a release, are mainly focusing on the artist and what that artist has to do. They don't exercise the same sort of control that major record companies do. So in terms of, for instance, P Money, who I know is recording stuff for them, he's going to release an album through KOG shortly. They want him to do what he does. That KOG don't tell any of their artists what they'd like. They just say, right, you want to do an album, do whatever you want, we'll release it.
Releases like Aotearoa, which are quite often considered by a lot of sort of art critics, or say the Rota ones, to be really, really amazing musically, but they obviously don't sell as well because you need to have quite a perhaps cultured or in-depth musical knowledge to see where it's coming from. They might only sell a couple of hundred copies in New Zealand, but say for example in the case of Rota, will sell 10 times that overseas.
The problem in New Zealand is that the market's so small that good music can quite often not get the attention that it deserves, because even though it's the same percentage of people in New Zealand who might be into that style of music as overseas, the fact is because New Zealand is so small that that group is very small and they don't get represented in radio play and things like that.
You do your more commercial ones, say the Pitch Black, which arguably still isn't commercial even slightly at all. 9-minute songs never really have been, since the sort of a prog rock era perhaps. But yeah, that helps fund your less commercial releases like your Rotas and Aotearoas. So yeah, basically we're going to release what we like because we can.
Releasing vinyl is is essential, especially overseas. I mean, it is in New Zealand as well, and it's been unfortunate the way that things have gone for us in vinyl, and that they've just kind of come back too late. Getting a piece of music on vinyl is important because you want to get it to the DJs who are playing out in clubs, and you want to get it to them early so that people, when they're hearing it, they go, I keep hearing that tune, and then they might go down to the record shop and sing it to the guy, and he goes, yeah, you want to get that little bit of vinyl there.
I don't think Subway would be as popular if KOG hadn't been around. I think the sort of the collective muscle and collective sort of spirit that KOG is makes everything much more viable and much more bigger than you could do by yourself or with less amount of people.
They're doing a strictly New Zealand thing because it's mainly electronica artists, and also because they're independent. They sort of work on very much on a sort of a socialist principle where it's a collective of people and they're all specialists in different fields and they work together as a team. The BNet, of course, is committed to promoting New Zealand music, so along comes a little record label like KOG, and you know, we have to get behind it.
I think KOG's been very important in the rise of popularity of electronic music. I don't think it's solely responsible. I mean, I think there's a lot of factors there. Just the whole international kind of wave that KOG is sort of part of. But I think what KOG has shown a lot of other people and a lot of other labels is that you can run a small label, do reasonably small runs, but make it work.
We'd push a single onto the radio possibly 6 months to before the album came out. Shinkansen off the Concord Dawn Disturbance album was released in December 2000, and I mean the album didn't even come out till June. So I mean that is, you know, it's essentially 6 months before, and then we followed up another 3 months later with another single, and then just as the album comes out, we bounced on the third. In terms of singles, I mean that's the best way to market an album, essentially, because people have a feeling for the way the whole album's gonna sound.
When Concord Dawn came along, people heard it and they were like, right, that's drum and bass, but it didn't sound like the other drum and bass that we were all listening to. It was like a little bit different, and I think their uniqueness is what has made them stand out. You know, really what it is about Concord Dawn that makes them different to all the English drum and bass scene is what has really made the New Zealand listeners latch onto them and go, wow, you know, that's drum and bass from here, that's our drum and bass.
Hi Hamish, it's Mikey from the radio.
Yay!
Hey! What the hell are you doing over there representing New Zealand and the label KOG?
Right at this very point in time, we have a gig full of electronic New Zealand sounds.
What was the point in opening the office in London? Is it because there's a lot of interest over there, or is it because there's so many New Zealand artists that are travelling through the area?
A bit of both, actually. I mean, being from New Zealand can be detrimental, and it can be completely proactive. And we got an angle that we can work on in London, just the fact that people are interested, they want something new, you know. It's fresh to them.
So once all the partying's over, how's the office going to work over there?
Basically, we're releasing a couple of more 12s out on Reliable Records, which is the house imprint of KOG, and we've got the Pitch Black album, which is being released in late October, and they've got a remix 12 that's coming out as well, and we're basically going to keep sales happening till the end of October, and then we're going to start it all again to coincide with New Zealand summer in February.
Excellent. Go KOG. Go the international long creeping arm of KOG that slowly hugs the whole world.
For where KOG is now, where it could still go, is just the fact that this group of people have grown up together and learned about each other, what we like and what we don't like about each other.
I think all the people that are part of KOG do it for the love of music and the community part of KOG. I think if KOG had been set up as a money-making record label, it would have failed a long time ago.
Most New Zealanders, even if they maybe don't like anything on KOG, kind of recognise that they are doing something good. They're putting out albums by people that probably wouldn't get their albums out otherwise. I mean, we're never going to sign to Sony or anything, you know, because we're just not.
As Andrew Manning says when he sort of samples or rips off a statement by Dame Fina Cooper, and he may have told you before, it's the people, the people, the people. If KOG was an animal, KOG would actually probably be an ecosystem.
If KOG was an animal, it would be a hydra with 7 heads.
It would be sort of a mutty kind of dog, really. a bit scabby around the edges, a bit stinky, but nice, really nice.
If KOG was an animal, it would be as tall as a giraffe, because they're all over 6 feet tall.
If KOG was an animal,
It would be a
4-headed mule.
KOG would be a human being.